Hello everybody, it's Maureen from Bling on the Chaos, just bringing you a quick tutorial on how to create a beautiful glittered bottom for your tumbler that matches your rhinestone tumbler. And they're also called glitter butts, as Jessie has so lovingly named them. So glitter bottoms or glitter butts, whatever you want to call them, just a quick tutorial for you today. I just want to say that I did come up with this technique by accident. I typically, when I begin my tumblers, I like to prep them by painting, base painting them. And so I normally have tape around the bottom and when I sand. And this one time I pulled the tape off when I was finished, and my tumblers have these little stickers on the bottom, and the sticker pulled off, and I was left with one that looked like this. And I just thought, oh, I can't send that out to my customer when they're paying $200 for a tumbler. So I needed to figure out what to do. So I do make epoxy tumblers. So I am well versed on using epoxy, and just came up with this little method that seems to fit the bill nicely and just kind of add that polished finish to your product. So the very first thing that you need to do is, if you do have a tumbler that has this center sticker, you need to remove that sticker just by pulling it up with a craft knife or some tweezers, and it's fairly simple. They just kind of pop off, just like so. And then what I like to do is just take a little bit of alcohol and take off any of the adhesive from the sticker. So this is just regular rubbing alcohol, and just clean off any gunk that's left behind and giving it a little bit of a wipe down, like so. Don't be too worried about if you can't get any of it off or all of it off, because you're going to be doing some sanding. So there we go. And then I like to use a fairly gritty sandpaper. When tumblers are made, when they come from the distributor, the wholesaler, or manufacturer, they do put a coating on top of the stainless steel so that it doesn't show as much wear and tear on daily use. So you do need to get through that and rough up the surface, just like regular prepping for your rhinestones. But I like to give it just a little bit more oomph, because epoxy does require a bit more tooth than your typical adhesive. So I like to stay inside of this inner rim of the tumbler. That's where the epoxy is going to go. I don't go over this outer edge, because then the epoxy will be in contact with the surface when your cup is the right side up. So try and stay within this inner circle with your sandpaper. I do both with my hand, and I also sometimes use a tool such as my stir stick, and I'll get in there and just go around. So I'm just going to pause the video while I sand this, because it is a little bit noisy, and I will be right back. Okay, so now that I have that sanded, I then go in with a little bit of rubbing alcohol and a coffee filter, just to clean off that excess file metal dust particles. And I should mention that when you're doing this, you should wear a mask, because as you can see, there is dust particles and metal bits and pieces that come off. So just be careful. Perhaps you might want to do it outside, and then bring your tumbler in when you're finished. And just Just giving that a good wipe down, getting all the dust off. This is just regular isopropyl alcohol, 90%. Just giving it a good wipe down, getting it all clean. Oh, pretty good. I'm just going to let those dry. So I'll set those aside. And now it's time to mix up my epoxy. So for these cups, my customer for this one, she wanted a mix of white glitter with a little bit of black in each of the colors of the rainbow that are in it. So I mixed up a little custom creation here with a bit of white flash and black, sort of iridescent black, and a little bit of each of the rainbow colors. And that's going to go on that one. And then for this customer, he wanted a little bit of each of them as well. And I should say that I do prefer to use chunky glitters for these. The chunkies do tend to drop and just cover the bottom a little bit better than I find that the fine glitter, but it's a personal preference, of course. So for this one, I've got a chunky silver with a smaller chunky black and just a touch of rose gold glitter in here. And you can certainly paint the base if you want. For me, for these two, I don't need to because I actually prefer to have the stainless as the background because the majority or the main color will be sort of a silvery white color. So it works just fine for these tumblers. But if I was to do a solid black on here, or maybe it was like a dark blue, I would probably want to base paint this. Just like our rhinestones, base painting adds, fills in any of the gaps that might be showing between the glitter pieces, and also it increases and boosts the color of that glitter, so the payoff is a lot greater. So those are my colors that I have. I'm just going to mix my epoxy now. I do use both fast set and regular set. I don't have a preference for them, but in this case I'm going to just use regular epoxy because that's just what I have on hand right now. So for mixing, you're going to need about maybe 5 mLs for each of the tumblers, and I do over pour, so I usually mix up 15 mils just in case I make a mistake and I've got a little extra. I also do I send off a little gift with my creations, so this extra epoxy, if anything's left over, I do have my alphabet mold handy, and I will pour the extra epoxy with any of the extra glitter left over into the alphabet mold, and then I bling that out and send that as a little gift of thank you to my customers. So I am using Counterculture DIY epoxy today. I do find for me it works the best for smaller amounts. I would do work with a couple of different brands of epoxy, but I find that for mixing small amounts, CC DIY works the best for me. So I am just measuring equal parts here because that's what this epoxy requires. So I'm doing 7.5 mils of part A and 7.5 mils of part B. I do warm my part A. I find that it helps me with micro bubbles and getting rid of any of those little bubbles that can cause an issue when the epoxy cures. So I'm just going to be mixing this up for the required time. Giving it a good stir all around, getting all the edges really well. Scraping off my tool. I don't want any areas of my mixing cup to be left with more than one of the epoxy parts, because then when I go to pour it, I may end up with an uncured epoxy. So I'm very careful at making sure that I get all of it mixed in well. This usually takes about a minute and a half to mix this all in. And again, I have worked with epoxy for quite a while now, so I can just usually tell by look when it's ready. But if you're new to epoxy, you may want to use a timer and make sure that you mix by the required time from the manufacturer. Now again, this is the using epoxy for this. I am not a Crystal-Lac user, so unfortunately I don't know if this is possible or this method is possible with Crystal-Lac. I also have seen some attempts of doing this method with Mod Podge. I'm not sure the longevity of it, but perhaps you could cover the top of it with the what is it? The dishwasher safe Mod Podge, and then you have to let, I believe it takes 30 days to cure for that before it can be used. So that would be quite a waiting period for your customer to receive your, but maybe it's for you. That would be fine. Anyway, let me just get the cloth here and wipe this off. So there we go. I have some little bubbles in here, but that's okay because I will get rid of them, and some of the bubbles will come back right when I start mixing in the glitter anyway. Okay, so I will just move this to the side and I will get ready here. I'm just going to change my gloves because I don't want to touch my tumbler with maybe some epoxy on my glove. Okay, so let's start with this one. Oops. I'm going to start here. So I'm going to take a bit of this glitter and I'm going to mix it into my epoxy. And I don't want to mix too much. I don't want to put too much into my epoxy because it will get too thick and it will be difficult for the glitter to lay smooth. So again, just a little bit at a time. You can always add more. And I'm being very careful at not stirring in any large bubbles. Okay. All right. Let's And let that sit so the bubbles can rise to the top. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing here with my rainbow. Put my glitter in, just stir very gently. Just like so. And I'm going to let it sit so the bubbles can rise to the surface. So here we are with our first one. So what I will do is I will start pouring, and I want to only pour a little bit at a time because I want to keep inside that outer rim. So I'm going to give it a pour, like so, and I'm stopping. And then I'm going to help it reach that rim by just tilting it and working it around. And again, you don't want to overfill this because you want that epoxy to stay within that recessed bottom. If it's too much epoxy, then your tumbler is going to rest on the epoxy rather than that outer rim. Just want it to get to that edge right there. Okay, so now that I've got it covered, kind of just tilting it a bit to equal out where the glitter is spread. I'm looking at it from the side and I can see that it's not above that rim, and I can add a wee bit more in here just to give it a little bit more fill. Let it sit. The nice thing with epoxy is it is self-leveling, so you don't need to do anything with that except for make sure that it's on a level surface. Now see where this epoxy right here doesn't want to get all the way equal. I just want to touch the edge here just to make sure that it looks equal all the way around. Same here. See how this one is a little bit more up the side than the other, so I'm just going to touch where the other ones are and just equal or level it out. Go around. It just gives you a nice clean edge. And then I'll add a last little bit of epoxy in there, and it will create a nice clean rim. Like so. So what, that was 7.5, well maybe it was about 7 mils, but this is a 30-ounce skinny, so the bottom is bigger than the 20-ounce, and the recessed area is a little bit bigger. So just add that in. see one area here that bugs me. Like so. A little bit of a tilt. There we go. Now, those of you who are epoxy people and have worked with chunky glitter, you know that chunky glitter can be a little bit of the devil. And so you want to make sure that when you are laying your epoxy, you look from the side and make sure that none of the little chunky glitters are sitting above the surface of the epoxy, which it can tend to be. And you know, I'm going to just pull out a couple of these little rose gold pieces just to spread them around a little bit. There's one more in here I want. Like so.
Well.
Okay, so just make sure that these are in there. There we go. That looks pretty good. Alright, so now I'm going to leave that to the side. And looks pretty good. This is where you can keep playing with things and then you end up messing it up, but I saw that little edge right there. I just want to make sure that they look clean. So. Okay, so now I'm ready to do the rainbow. Let's give it a little bit of a mix here. And again, just pouring slowly, letting the epoxy level itself. Giving it a bit of a tilt. I apologize if you can hear my kids outside. Kick them out so I could do some recording. And of course they choose to play right by the window, of course. Just working this around. Sometimes chunky glitter doesn't want to be your friend, so you need to convince it. Where you want it to go. Just using my tool here to nudge it into place. Looking from the side to make sure that it's not overfilled. Giving a little bit of a tilt to spread out that glitter. And using my tool here, just clean up my edges. My cloth that I use to wipe off on, it's just a baby wipe. Works really well with epoxy. Clean your tools off. Look around. Looks like I need a little bit of this colored epoxy, or sorry, this glitters over here. Just gonna mix it up a bit. Get them over there. And then again, let the epoxy do the work for you to self-level. So it's important to make sure that you have your tumbler sitting on a level surface. If you go over the side like I did just there, just get your tool. Could be a toothpick, could be a popsicle stick, anything you can use to scrape off. Even just the edge of your baby wipe or a little bit of alcohol on a coffee filter will work. Just wipe that up. You want to wipe it up now before it cures, and then you have to really work at getting it off. There we go. That looks great. I'm just looking at it from above to see if I can see any glitters that are popping out. Move it around, looking from the side to make sure that it's level. It is. And then the last thing is to hit it with some, with my heat gun, just to pop any bubbles that may be sitting on top. Give it a quick pop. One more. Careful not to get too close. Otherwise you'll scorch the epoxy. And that's it, gang. Now I'm going to let them sit level somewhere. I like to put a bin over top of mine just to keep any of the bugs or dust from landing on it. And then I give these guys a full few days to cure while I wait for my adhesive with my rhinestones to cure. And then after my wait period, I give everything a good wash, and that's it. And then I bundle up and send off to the customer. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. Feel free to ask any questions that you might have. And thank you for watching. Bye for now.